So I'm sure we can all relate to having those days where you wake up in the morning and think, I'd rather just die than go into work. Well, now you can do both. The Belko Experiment is one of those movies that seems like it purely exists because somebody with a little bit of influence thought, hey, that's a pretty cool idea, I should do that. And it seems like that may have actually been what happened, with James Gunn, the writer of the movie, having a dream about this very scenario and deciding that that would make a pretty interesting movie. And generally speaking, anything James Gunn is involved with does tend to be pretty interesting. Super, Sliver, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Suicide Squad, and let's not forget the timeless masterpiece, the Citizen Kane of modern times, Scooby-Doo. The movie primarily takes place in the Belko Industries building, a company situated in Colombia that's supposedly in charge of securing employment on behalf of major clients. But before we jump into that, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. Atlas VPN is a service designed to help keep you safe online, while at the same time unlocking the web to give you access to region-locked content. Developed by top cybersecurity specialists and IT engineers in 2020, Atlas VPN was created to make the internet accessible and secure for everyone. The service encrypts your data and hides your virtual location. If you ever connect to public Wi-Fi, say in a coffee shop or on a train for example, you're essentially broadcasting your data to everybody around you for people to then go and do whatever they want with it. But Atlas VPN ensures that your data and internet traffic is safe. Not only is it a great way to keep your information private from individuals or companies, but the service also comes with a myriad of different benefits. Its new third-party tracker blocker protects you from pesky trackers around the web that would otherwise keep track of your online activities and then sell that data off to companies or advertisers. As well as its new data breach monitor, a security feature designed to track any of your data breaches across the web by scanning leaked databases across the web and then informing you if any of your information has been leaked so you can adequately protect yourself. And something that is incredibly important to me is getting access to shows or movies that otherwise might be region locked in my area. For example, want to watch something that's exclusive to US Netflix, but you're not in the States? Well, hop on Atlas VPN, change your region, and the world will open up to you, giving you access across all of your devices. So if you're interested in what Atlas VPN has to offer, then click the link in the description, because currently, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount for their 3-year deal for just $1.39 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Click that link to find out more. The movie begins with us seeing the employees turning up for another run-of-the-mill day at work, but for some reason, there's an unusual amount of security on the premises, who all happen to be new. Right from the get-go I'm suspicious, as things already seem rather unusual for an office setting. People seem cheery and genuinely happy to be here, which is pretty odd in itself because anybody who works in an office tends to be completely dead to the world. We're introduced to a handful of different people within the company, one of them being Danny, a woman starting her first day on the job, where we then learn that all employees have been microchipped with trackers due to the large amount of kidnappings that occur in Colombia. So they're told anyway. A few other employees being Mike, Evan the security guard, Leandra, Mike's girlfriend, this weird guy Wendell, who's got a strange thing for Leandra, Norris, the COO of the company, Terry, Keith, Roberto, Marty, Bud and Lonnie, and that's all the names I'm going to be reading off, because there's literally 80 employees in this building, and that would just make for a rather boring video. We learn that the only employees in the building today are all the foreigners, as all of the Colombian locals were denied entry by security and sent back home for the day. Hey, a day off work is a day off work. Pretty soon, most of the non-natives are going to be wishing they got sent home too, because after Mike notices security personnel heading into an old disused bunker, a voice appears over the PA system. Do voices appear? Anyway, a voice voices over the PA system and informs everybody that there's currently 80 people in the building, and in 8 hours, most of them will be dead. The only chance that they have at survival is if they excel at the tasks that they're going to be given. The first task is to murder any 2 of their fellow employees in the next 2 hours. Well, that took a rather drastic jump. 1 minute you're being told to fill out spreadsheets, and the next you're being told to cave in Brad from IT's brains. Talk about having a soul-crushing job. Obviously everybody's a little confused with the strange voice ordering them to murder. Some people think that it's clearly some kind of poor taste joke, while others start to get genuinely worried. But things quickly start to seem a little bit more serious, as they then realise that the phone lines are down, cell service is being blocked, and there's actually nobody in the room with the intercom system. when all of a sudden, all of the doors and windows to the outside of the building go into lockdown, all being covered with thick metal that prevents anybody from getting in or anybody from getting out. Bud and Lonzo, the maintenance team, start trying to blowtorch their way through it, while another group decides to head for the roof to see if they can catch anybody's attention. But they quickly realize that they're not going to get through the metal, as the blowtorch isn't even capable of heating it up. There's no luck with the people on the roof either, as the only person that they can see is a security guard that blatantly ignores them to take a sip of his morning coffee. Man's got his priorities. Marty, one of the employees on the roof, doesn't appear to be all that affected by what's occurring, as he tells everyone that this is clearly some kind of psychological test and that they should all just chill out for a while. Marty is right about the psychological test, however, he isn't right about the whole chilling out part, as all of a sudden, he finds himself covered with the contents of someone else's brain. Back in the building, the exact same thing begins to happen, as everybody's standing around in the lobby, confused and not exactly sure what to do with themselves, when all of a sudden, people's heads begin to explode. After the initial shock and confusion of watching your co-worker's cranium spontaneously implode, Norris discovers that those aren't in fact bullet wounds. They've exploded from the inside, leading Mike to figure out that it must be the tracking devices implanted in their heads, which also explains why the locals were sent home, as only the foreigners had them implanted. Mike, not exactly okay with the idea of carrying around an explosive in his skull, decides to take a box cutter to the back of his head in an attempt to remove the device. But as he's cutting his way into the flesh, the voice comes back onto the PA system and personally calls him out. The voice tells him to set down the knife, otherwise they're going to detonate the explosive device. And with Mike thinking that red wouldn't suit these bathroom walls, he decides to put the knife down. The voice once again begins to speak, basically saying that now you know we aren't messing around, and we will kill you with the flick of a switch. In the next 2 hours, we want 30 more people dead, otherwise we'll kill 60 of you instead. So basically, the perfect opportunity to let out some of that pent-up workplace rage. Debbie from HR keeps eating all of the food you put in the communal fridge for lunch. Hunt that hag down and drown her in a toilet. Maybe I've got some issues. Bud and Lonzo are down in the basement, attempting to get the AC unit working, as it seemed to have shut off when everything went into lockdown, and at this point, Lonzo seems to be incredibly on edge, which gets exacerbated when someone upstairs pulls the fire alarm thinking it will contact the fire department. He begins to freak out, and with Bud being the good friend that he is, he attempts to calm down his friend, but Lonzo reacts to Bud approaching him by swinging his wrench and caving in the front of his skull, killing him in the process. Danny, the woman we saw earlier starting her first day on the job, has been hiding down here since it all began, and she's just witnessed everything. Talk about a stressful first day on the job. He notices her and proceeds to grab her while repeatedly telling her it was an accident, and in an attempt to get free from him, she pushes him away, which results in 3 metal spikes going right through the back of his head and killing him. 2 people accidentally dead in the span of about 30 seconds. The 30 will be dead in no time. The employees begin to discuss and argue the moral conundrum of killing 30 people to save themselves. It's like this movie is one big blown out example of the trolley problem. Do nothing and 60 die, but are you responsible for that? Or take action and kill 30, but be directly responsible? Well, that is if you even survive the 60 people being killed. And with there only being 80 employees in the building, well, less now, I don't think I like those odds. Mike really doesn't like the idea of having to kill anyone for any reason. The party pooper, with him stating that some will fare better than others, referring to Norris's background of being in the special forces. So instead, he tries to insist that they all try something else. The majority of the group decides that the best option isn't to just immediately start massacring your co-workers because some random voice told you to, and instead try to hang some banners from the rooftop, hoping that a passerby will notice and call for help. While Norris and a handful of others believe that there's simply not enough time for that, knowing that the only way that they're going to get out of here and see their families again is if they do something bold, and they do it quickly. And by that, they mean breaking into the armory where the security keeps their weapons and massacring everyone. At least they attempt to anyway, because Mike uses Evan's gun to shoot at the gas supplied to their blowtorch, meaning that the only way they're getting in there is with the keys that Evan is in possession of. Very quickly, this has devolved into two teams. The people who think that they should find another way out of this, and the people who think that they should kill their way out of this. Mike and the rest head up to the roof with the banners, but as they're attempting to tie them to the building, the security forces take notice and begin to fire at them, with one of the shots hitting Keith in the hand. Mike, showing some serious good guy hero characteristics already by trying to talk people out of senseless killing, runs back into the gunfire to try and tie up the banner himself. But once again, the voice comes back on the PA system, telling him that if he continues, the explosives will detonate. This guy on the PA system is starting to do my head in. Doesn't he remind you of someone you might have played a game with as a kid? Someone who keeps making up rules on the fly because they don't like how you're beating them? Sounds like a sore loser to me. As they begin walking back downstairs, unsure as to what they'll do next, Norris hits Mike over the head with a fire extinguisher and takes his gun. Wendell asks Evan for the keys to the armory, but Evan throws them down the stairwell, to which Wendell calmly and rationally responds by stabbing him in the gut. Evan threw them down the stairwell that they were already on their way down. That added what, an extra 30 seconds before they could get the keys? Yet he kills him anyway? Well, it doesn't surprise me really. Look at that face. I bet he kills on his days off. They retrieve the keys, easily mind you, giving them access to a handful of different pistols that they then hand out to everybody in their small group. After they're armed, the group go around the building, gathering everybody up and taking them back to the lobby. For some reason, this armed guy spots Danny hiding in the basement, and even though he's rounding up a bunch of other people to be murdered, he decides to leave her there. I don't know. Maybe he thinks she's cute or something. These other people? Nah, they're ugly. Kill them all. Mike comes to see Evan laying there dead with a knife sticking out of his gut, before he and a group of others are ushered into the lobby by Wendell. Instead of just indiscriminately killing everybody, Norris has tried to rationalize his actions by separating the people into groups. Kinda reminds me of a certain dictator. Everyone with children under the age of 18 get a free pass and are to stand against one of the walls, but they then separate everyone over the age of 60 to go stand by another wall. The problem being, there's only 7 people over the age of 60, so Norris decides to completely throw that plan out the window and begins to just randomly select people, Mike included. One of the chosen people resists being put against the wall, quite understandably to be honest, to which the completely rational and of sound mind Wendell walks over to the man and fires multiple shots into his chest. After they've lined up everyone that they need, they turn on the radio in an attempt to drown out the horrifying noises which are about to occur, and then Norris starts making his way down the line, shooting each person in the head as he goes, casually committing mass murder with ease, as if it's just another day at the office. Wait, it is. Terry, one of the armed men, begins to break down, crying and puking, as I'm sure a lot of people would, at the sight of your fellow co-workers' brains violently leaving their bodies, and Mike takes the opportunity to try and talk him into giving him his gun, but Terry just aims it at the back of his head, seconds away from pulling the trigger, when all of a sudden, we see Danny, still down in the basement, has managed to turn the power off to the building. Everyone makes a run for it, resulting in the group of armed men opening fire indiscriminately into the fleeing crowd. Amongst the chaos of gunshots, screaming and death, one of the elevators open in the basement to reveal Roberto, someone who made friends with Danny earlier. She enters the elevator with him and they both start climbing out of it to get into the elevator shaft. All the while, the armed men are walking around the building, ruthlessly killing everybody that they come across. I understand that this is literally life or death for them, but merely an hour or two earlier, they were all happy, average office workers, and now they're walking around putting bullets in people without it even bothering them. Well, I guess when there's a job to be done, you gotta get to it. One of the men almost shoots Peggy, but it's an ambush as Mike jumps onto the man's back, while Peggy takes the man's knife and stabs him to death with it. We see another one of the armed men down in the basement, when all of a sudden he gets jumped by a man, followed by a group of other survivors, who then proceed to violently stomp the man to death, leaving the only armed men being Norris, Wendell, and Terry. The voice presents itself on the PA system again, to inform everyone that they've killed 29 people so far, and they've got another 2 minutes to kill one more person. Otherwise, another 31 of them will be killed. Leandra is followed into an office by Terry, but she's managed to remove the blade from a paper guillotine that she then uses to get the jump on Terry by slicing at his arms and legs, knocking him to the floor. She's about to deal the final blow and potentially save the lives of 30 other people, but as he begins to cry and beg for his life, she can't bring herself to actually kill him. Of course, her effort to spare his life is completely in vain, as almost immediately his brain explodes all over the room, followed by many others.
It's all in my mind. It's all in my mind. It's all in my mind!
Wow, this movie is mind-blowing. What the hell? The constant brain explosions stop for a moment, and Keith appears from behind a desk, happy that he's just managed to survive such an absolutely horrific ordeal, and that he's actually going to be free from all of this madness. Okay. You'd think at this point, the lucky survivors would just be relieved that they've actually managed to make it through these random killings, but they're quickly going to learn that they're not as lucky as they might have thought, as once again, the voice comes back, now telling them that the final stage of the game has begun, and at the end of 1 hour, the person who has the most amount of kills will be able to live. Almost immediately followed by Wendell hacking up a group of cowering, terrified victims, because he's not one to pass up the opportunity at some indiscriminate killing. The man who jumped the gunman in the basement earlier now begins firing at his fellow co-workers, and Norris snaps the neck of a woman trying to seduce him because he doesn't want to waste the bullet. He's a ruthless killer, and he's savvy. Well, I guess that's why he was the COO. Norris enters the elevator and notices Roberto and Danny above it, and begins to take shots at the pair. Danny jumps to safety in time, but Roberto isn't quite as lucky, as when he jumps, he gets caught between the concrete and the elevator, which proceeds to violently crush him to death, jamming the elevator in place, trapping Norris inside. Meanwhile, Leandra finds Marty in the lobby, digging around in the back of the executed victims' heads, where he tells her that he's taking out the bombs so that he can gather up a pile big enough to blow through the metal doors, which is actually a pretty smart idea. So it's a shame when he's almost immediately killed when he walks into a room with his friend and Leandra, in the process alerting Wendell, who happens to be hacking up a clearly already dead man, because, you know, like, guess it's fun or something. Leandra hits Wendell with her one and only bullet, and Wendell fires back, killing Marty's friend, before shooting a bullet through Marty's neck as he and Leandra attempt to rush Wendell. Leandra manages to make it to Wendell, and this time she isn't going to hesitate to kill, and repeatedly swings a fire axe into his skull. Like a lot. He's very dead. Mike and Leandra meet up in the lobby, where Mike then takes the bombs that Marty removed. Danny escapes into a different elevator shaft, and we see Norris pry his way out of the one that he's stuck in. A man then enters the lobby, and apparently he harbours a deep hatred for old women, as he launches a Molotov at one, engulfing her in flames. But the pyromancer's reign of terror is short-lived, as Norris enters the lobby and kills him before he takes off after Mike and Leandra. But as the pair are hiding, Mike notices that Leandra got hit by one of the bullets, before she then slumps over and dies. We then see Danny jump into another elevator before pressing the button to open it, but as she does, she's face to face with Norris, who wastes absolutely no time and puts a bullet directly into her head. With Leandra dead, Mike jumps Norris, and the pair proceed to get into a fistfight. And by a fistfight, I mean Norris beats the crap out of Mike, but Mike manages to get the upper hand by hitting him in the head with something, giving him the opportunity to grab the ultimate self-defense weapon, the tape holder, and violently caving in his skull with it. And finally, after all of the loss of life, terror and bloodshed, the metal barriers come down. Mike is the final survivor. The security come and take him to the bunker, where he's introduced to the man behind the voice. The man explains to Mike that he's part of an organization that believes that social scientists must be allowed to study human behavior unaffected by outside forces. You know, like the law. Pesky things like rules and laws do tend to get in the way of mass murder after all. All of this death was simply nothing more than data. And after everything that Mike has been through, the man simply asks him, how is he feeling? To which Mike responds by informing him that the bombs he took earlier have been planted on everybody in the room who was close enough to him, before making a mad dash to the control panel and detonating the bombs, before quickly picking up a rifle to deal with the stragglers. He aims the rifle at the man responsible for this and begins to unload. He walks out of the bunker with 79 of his dead colleagues lying on the floor of the building next to him, and the camera begins to pan out, revealing that this one experiment at Belko Industries was just one out of dozens, if not potentially hundreds, all simultaneously underway. And then the movie ends. So basically, even though he managed to kill the few people in charge of this operation, he's done nothing in the grand scheme of things, and considering that he's being watched, I wouldn't be surprised if killing those people was also part of the experiment too, because why else would he be filmed separately? Look, the Belko Experiment is hardly a movie with deep philosophical meaning. Sure, it's a commentary on what extreme lengths humans will go to if given no other option. Some will just start killing everything and some will not start killing everything. It's more along the lines of being one of those movies that you watch purely for the premise and the brutal violence. It certainly does give off the vibe of something that was conjured up in a dream. Because I don't know about you, but I've had plenty of over-the-top, insane dreams of being in completely hopeless situations like this, with everything just being pure misery and dread. Because I guess my brain hates me or something. Well, that's the Belko Experiment. It's basically just that old Newgrounds game, Whack Your Boss, realised as a full-motion picture. Before we wrap things up, I'd like to give a big shout out to my patrons. A big thank you to Dom, Bort, Hunters263, Rebecca Pitts, Benz, Total Drama Rebooted, A Dandy in Space, Martin Brannan, Natasha Twyman, Rin and Whiskey, Jarrett C. Bees, Nicholas, Pascal Mathis, John, Alex X. Jackson, Fighting the Pirates, Tajvia Sandhu, Chucky Dodd, Amy Denver, Victor Kartelov, Richard McGowan III, and Kyle York. Your continuous support to the channel is incredibly inspiring to me, and your guys' support to the channel means far more to me than I think you actually realise, so thank you so much. The channel's also got a Discord server, so if you'd like to discuss this movie or other movies in general with like-minded people, there's a place where you can come together and do just that. And if you wanted to leave a recommendation for the series, that'd be the best place to do it. So once again, thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you to everyone else for watching.